This isn't my most favorite Blind Melon song, but it's the one that everybody knows. Um, I only really know two songs, and this is one of them. But I there was a Blind Melon song that was on one of the magazine things. Came out. I don't know when it came out, but maybe it was in '95 or something. I For some reason it seemed like um, Shannon died later than '95, but maybe I was just becoming a fan later. But I'm not really a fan. I'm not a fan. I just like a few Blind Melon songs, and I like one really. I really like one. Maybe I should do that one if it's on here, but I'll do the No Rain one. I suggest seeing his documentary. It was made from him videotaping his life. I'd never known somebody to do that. However, I've done that with. I had a Olympus D380 and a C750 that I could make two-in-one photo modes. I used the two-in-one photo modes on those to make stereo photographs, and because of the novelty of that, which is kind of how I spend my time, is through novelty. I consider if I've got time, it's time, that I can be novel and do something. And making stereo photographs was it whenever I was in my 30s. Fortunately, Shannon never lived to be 30. He died when he was 28. The funny thing is that my father told me that if I had been a girl, my name would have been Shannon. Um, Kiernan's actually a boy's name in England. It's not usually a girl's name, but Shannon's a girl's name. So that, uh, and proof to that is that our family physician was a guy named um, Doctor. Dang it, what's his name? At the Los Alamos Hospital. Uh, Anyhow, my doctor, he had he had this lady that was working with him named Shannon. She would draw the blood and really liked me a lot, and would talk to me all the time, and really kind of enthusiastic and stuff. But my my dad's remarked that my name would have been Shannon if I had been a girl like her. Her name was Shannon too. Um, Dr. Hertzman was my family physician in Los Alamos, and he had a girl working with him named Shannon. Um, anyhow, I hope this is not taken from the original one, because then YouTube will take it down. I can't sing that high. All I can say is that my life is pretty plain, and that's true. I like watching puddles gather rain. All I can do is just pour some tea for two and speak my point of view, but it's not sane. It's not sane. I just want someone to say to me, oh, 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 I'll always be there when you wake. Yeah, you know I'd like to keep my cheeks dry today. So stay with me and I'll have it made. Oh, I don't understand why I sleep all day. and I start to complain there's no rain. And all I can do is read a book to stay awake. And it rips my life away, but it's a great escape. That's the funny thing is I can't read books. They put me to sleep. Escape. Escape. Ooh. Yeah. I've never been able to make it through it in a book. I came pretty close to it with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. All I can say is that my life is pretty plain. You don't like my point of view. You think I'm insane. A lot of people think I'm insane. It's not sane. It's not sane. I just want someone to say to me, oh, 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 I'll always be there when you wake. Yeah, hey, hey. You know I'd like to keep my cheeks dry today. So stay with me and I'll have it made. Oh, I'll have it made. I'll have it made. Oh, no, no, no. You know, I really know you really don't have it made. Hey, hey. You know, I'll have it made. Oh. I'm completely not anything like this guy. I mean, my life is pretty plain. But one thing I didn't notice about him is he didn't seem to use computers and he didn't seem to play video games, which are like really big with me. And I do waste a lot of time and he didn't want to waste any time, so that's kind of how we were different. I don't want to see anything about stuff. Look, it's a targeted ad. Targeted ad from my bank. Come on. Okay. Blind Melon. Blind Melon karaoke. Repeat that, and then let's add to that. Put Tones of Home. Search. I sure hope they have it. Yeah. See if this is any good. Oh no, I think this is stolen from the original song. That's they do that sometimes. They take it straight from the see this. It is. Well, I'll have to do it without the music. They do that sometimes. They'll actually take the music from the song, and then you can't use it on YouTube because then it'll get recognized by the thing, and then you can't use it. It's just Tones of Home. Tones of Home. I've had friends that are like him, but I'm nothing like him. I don't have long hair. Full art. Yeah, that's one word. What do you think they would say if I stood up and walked away? Nobody here really understand me, and so I'll wave goodbye and I'm fine. Tones of Home said, you don't like the way I'm living. You don't like me. Tones of Home, and so I'm waving goodbye. I'm flying home. And I always thought that would be the land of. I thought that this would be the land of milk and honey. Oh, but I came out to find out that it's all hate and money, and there's a canopy of greed holding me down. See, I'm tied to you, soft fade away. Okay, well, I don't remember the. I like the song. I can't really sing the lyrics. And I'm documenting my world. But I don't think I'll die from a drug overdose. More like a heart attack or a stroke. Because that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. Is potentials for blood clots. I'm in my 50s. I don't do any drugs. The closest I ever come to drugs is, well, I've already talked about one thing, and I don't drink caffeine anymore. And the funny thing is that for the past week I've been able to, for the past week I've been not getting that much sleep, because usually I just decide I have to go to bed whenever it hits about 1 or 2. Sometimes I can't even make it that far. It'll be like 11 o'clock. But my biggest stimulant right now is video games. And it's one video game that I play called PlanetSide 2. And it is by far the most addictive first-person shooter in existence. And it's worse than a first-person shooter. It's a massively multiplayer, online game, first-person shooter with real-time strategy. So it's kind of like StarCraft mixed with Battlefield. And it's massively multiplayer like World of Warcraft or something like that. So you end up in these large battles, these huge battles. I guess that's like Eve. You end up with these huge battles where there's just like infantry, tanks, air vehicles, and all sorts of stuff. You know, we even have battleships in the air, and they're adding more stuff to it all the time. It's on Sony PlayStation 4 and 5. It's also on the PC. And it's free. Although people like me are too impatient to play it free. Then you would want certain things right now. You have to pay for them, and but it's you don't have to. I mean, you can. I've gone through the game before with characters and not ever had paid any money on them and still done okay. It's better. It's easier now than it used to be. It used to be that when you played the game, it was very tough to get these things called certs. You could only get them through XP. Now the thing practically showers you with certs like after every game, so it doesn't take people any time to level up their characters and get all the weapons. But the big thing now is saving up for implants, and you can either wait a month and get the implant you want using ISO that you get after game. You get like 300 ISO. If your faction wins like 3 games in a row, you'll get 1,000 ISO. You need 45,000 ISO to get a specific rare or an exceptional implant, what they call exceptional implants. And the one that everybody wants is something called avoidance, which means that if you you can walk over mines and they don't blow up. And the Spitfires, which are these automatic guns that you can set up, won't shoot you. But I get around those two things fairly easily by throwing these things called EMPs. But there's a certain there's a certain what was that about? There's a certain implant. No, there's not a certain implant. The implant called avoidance. There's a certain case where I set up this stuff called no hack, which prevents the enemy from converting our tank terms. And this is something I set up specifically. I'd actually done the first of this because nobody was using it before me, and I threw up a proxy mine with 2 tank mines on the terminals, and that made it so that the cloakers could never get anywhere near. And that cloakers are snipers that can become invisible, but they can also convert tank terms. And if the tank term has got a proxy mine and 2 tank mines, and you don't have the avoidance implant, you can't go over there and convert the term and pop out a Sunday. That's the reason why people now want the avoidance, is because I guess they've gotten people use the no hack quite a lot now, or they'll put mines near the terms, but they don't quite do no hack. They don't quite get the idea that you need to have tank mines on it, because if the guy blows up, he dies and the tank mine and the tank term gets destroyed. But most people don't get that, and so they don't put the tank terms, the tank mines on there. I'm a very complex. I played this game enough that I keep finding stuff out. That's what makes video games really nice, is when you just keep learning, and there's like new techniques all the time, and you pick up things and you learn things. Like one thing I'd been doing was putting proxy mines on control points, and I told people that I was putting tank mines on the air pads. And somebody said, "Oh, you ever heard about jihading?" And I said, "Look, jihading has been around ever since Battlefield 1942. I mean, putting C4 on a vehicle, then running into somebody else and blowing up the C4, that's been around forever. I think it's been around since Battlefield 1942. I forgot when they started using C4 packs in these Battlefield games. But I can remember a time before Battlefield, and I can remember a time before there were ever 3D games like Quake. I can remember before Doom, before Castle Wolfenstein. I can remember, two-dimensional video games, and I played Zaxxon whenever I was very young, and Xevious. I liked Xevious, and knew all of the arcade games back in the 80s, and I started with Pong, Magnavox Pong, and we had an Atari 2600, which only had the memory that was inside the CPU itself. There was no RAM on the board. I believe there was no RAM on the board. I think all the RAM it was using was the registers inside the processor. And so that was about 128 bytes. That's all you need to make a video game, because what's inside of the Atari 2600 is these things called sprites, and it's got a system in there that checks for the collision of sprites. And so all you need to do is if a sprite is moving, it's moving, the system's going to keep it moving, and if it collides with another sprite, that collision will send off a flag. And all your program has to do is check to see if those two things collide. And if they do, then you do something, and you set something in the state, which is the 128 bytes. That's what's used just for state memory, for scoring, and things like that. You really don't need a whole lot to make a video game. And that was the Atari 2600. And I think if people were to make video games professionally, they should probably test to see if they can make video games on an Atari 2600 before ever trying to make a video game for any other platform, because if you can't do it with the 2600, then you probably shouldn't be making video games, because the 2600 was the simplest system, and it's a minimalistic. It's the most minimalistic, probably not the most minimalistic, but it is a minimalistic video game system, and from that you can understand what you really need in order to make a video game. And I'm sure that you couldn't make a game like Minecraft because that would require more memory. But you could probably create something that's like Minecraft. Probably, you see, 128 bytes times 8 bits is how many bits? That's going to be like 4096 bits or something like that. So, let me see. 8. Well, 128 times 4 is 512. It's going to be 1024 bits. That means that you could store. I mean, you couldn't do Minecraft, but you could do Super Mario Brothers maybe. Super Mario Brothers would be possible, but you wouldn't be able to store all the info. What you can't do is you can't do video games that retain a lot of data. The only video games you can do are things where it's like tank games. Pac-Man might be possible. You might want to check out the Atari 2600 Pac-Man and check to see how many dots there were in that screen. It's possible that it couldn't have been more than 512 dots, because if it was 1,000 dots, then you could determine the placement of the dots by using an algorithm, a special curve to place the dots, and then use the bits to determine whether or not the dots were there. Actually, how they do that is that they put the code inside of the ROM to tell where the dots would be, and then to check to see if the state of the dot of being there or not is determined by the information in the registers. So the registers would represent all the dots that are on the screen. That's the only time. See, that's the only state memory you have, is what's inside the registers. So you have to be really creative, and it would be really a test of being both a creator and an engineer to make video games, say on an Atari 2600. Now, Steve Jobs people knew that Steve Jobs had a job at Atari, but they gave him a job because they thought he was a hacker, not because he could program. He couldn't. He didn't make any video games for Atari. He was given a job there. He thought that was novel. The guy who really did the computer science at Apple was Steve Wozniak. He was the guy who created the Apple. And the only reason why he was with Steve Jobs was because Steve Jobs knew girls. So,